Eleanor A. Spalding of 750 Edgemont, Apartment 10, Lansing, Michigan 48917. Eleanor's phone number is 321-9465. The recording was made by Jim Walkinshaw at the Oldsmobile History Center at 4000 North Grand River on June 12, 1990. This is tape number 1 of 2 tapes. Hey, Eleanor, if you would just start with your name and address, please.
Well, I'm Eleanor Spalding, and at the office I was known as Tillie.
Okay.
And my address is 750 Edgemont, Apartment 10,
Okay.
Lansing, 48917. And my phone number is 321-9465.
Okay.
See any down.
No.
And I lived in that apartment. I've lived there for 23 years.
Oh, okay. I'd like you to go back to when you started and maybe what brought you to Oldsmobile.
Well, I started working right out of high school in an office in Ludington. It was called the Carom Company. And you remember the carom boards where they had shooters?
Oh, yeah.
And I worked there, started out at $10
Week?
a week.
Okay.
And the first thing I bought was a coat for $50.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to spend it.
Yeah, 5 weeks.
Not spend it, pay for it. So I got my credit right at 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then half the office force was laid off. And you think at the time it's the worst thing that ever happened to you.
Okay.
And I had taken dictation in high school, but I never used it at the Carom Company. So I took odd jobs at the bank and took dictation, at the Consumers Power and took dictation, found out I could take it.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brother said, why don't you, I was doing work for a political guy in Ludington. He said, why don't you tell him you'd like a job down in Lansing? So I finally did to shut my brother up. Then he called me one day and said there was an opening in Lansing and that a friend of his would drive me down Monday morning. And I had an appointment at a certain time in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing, my mother used to work in Lansing when she was a young girl. I've got a letter that she wrote in 1893.
My goodness.
Her first job.
Mm-hmm.
And she always kept track of this lady because they didn't have rooms like they do today.
Okay.
We stayed with the boss, she stayed at the boss's house, had a room there.
Oh, okay.
So she said, why don't you go there? So I went there for my interview, and I had a room before I even interviewed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the room was just vacated a week before that. Meeting for me. So I went there and had my interview. And he says, well, we've got another girl that's going to interview for this job. And so I just thought I was going to walk in and take it.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, I can't go home. I said goodbye to my friends. And he laughed. And he says, well, you come back this afternoon and take dictation. Well, as it turned out, I got that job. And the other girl got a job that's more to her liking in bookkeeping.
Okay.
So we were both happy.
Okay.
And where I had this room, I would look over. I worked for the Milk Marketing Board at the state. I'd see this Oldsmobile sign.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought, well, now that'd be nice to work there. And one of the women that had stayed at Mrs. Johnson's was in the sales department at Oldsmobile.
Mm-hmm.
And so she put a good word in for me, and I went and got an appointment. And I took my test. You know, when they give a test, especially shorthand. They read it to you.
Yeah.
They don't let up. They just go right on.
Yeah.
Well,
No
I didn't
spaces.
get it.
Uh-huh.
And I was taking dictation all the time at state.
Yeah.
So I finally told him, I says, I can't take that. I says, you don't dictate, you're reading.
Mhm.
Well, anyway, so he sent me upstairs in one of the executive suites. And one of the fellows dictated a 2-page letter to me.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And I had to put it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got it.
Oh.
And, but I didn't, my first job wasn't, of course, stenographer.
Okay. But that got you the job, did it?
Well, 3 days later, they called me at the state.
Uh-huh.
And of course, everybody goes down to the mailroom. And that was before they had slots.
Mm-hmm.
You just ran around the table like this.
It was just piled on a table?
Yeah, you went around.
Yeah.
There was one young girl, she wanted to impress everybody, and she ran around. She got dizzy. She went so fast, and here I am, tortoise in the hair.
Yeah.
I got my job done. And then my first interview, he asked me if I liked my work. I sat at a table on this side and another girl on this side.
Uh-huh.
And I was new and she was older.
Yeah.
So she would ask me all kinds of questions. So he told me I talked too much.
She would ask you questions. Really?
You know,
Okay.
keep the,
Yeah.
while we were working.
Yeah.
All I did was thumb through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're used to doing other things and that's all you do. Told me I talked too much. I said all I did was answering her questions. Then he told me that she put out more work than I did. Well, she'd been there 8 years.
Yeah.
So I said, well, give me 8 years, maybe I can do it.
Now, this is all at the state, right?
No, this is at the
The milk board.
Oldsmobile.
Oh, this is at the
I'm in
old job.
Oldsmobile.
Okay.
My first job, I went to printing.
What was your date to hire in? Do you remember?
December 17th, 1940.
Okay. All right.
And so I worked in
So you were in the mailroom when you first came
for
in?
about 3 days.
All right.
And they put me
Okay,
upstairs
now
to
I'm
the
with you.
accounting.
This was all in Building 60.
Yeah.
Old Building 60.
And he asked me if I liked my work, and I said no. I said I was used to taking dictation and answering the phones, and like somebody once told me, asked me what I did, and she said, oh, she files and dreams.
Right.
And so I had gone on my vacation. I think I had a week.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got back, they had this opening. At the time, it was in Building 36, and they told me I was the 5th girl inside the plant. That's because they never hired girls to work in the factory, and I know Jerry Bruce was ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in 36, and that I was there the same year that Edwards, Burnham, Monahan. Weren't there more that came all at once?
Edward Burnham on him. I don't know if Dykstra was Dykstra in that mess or not. No, I don't know. Anyway.
But they came to 36.
Mhm.
Oh, and then Ray Beach was my boss.
See, 36, well, what were you guys doing over there, you guys and gals?
Well, they were just setting stuff up.
Just for
And
the,
J.J. Edwards just behind me at a desk.
okay.
Just one of the kids, I guess.
Mhm.
No rhyme, no reason.
Okay.
And then when they made Building 40 an office, that's when I moved up there.
Okay.
And Ray Beach was my first boss.
That would have been very shortly thereafter, Eleanor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tom Darton was also
Uh-huh.
one of the supervisors in our department.
Okay. Did they tell you anything about what to expect working out in the plant, or did they try and scare you off, or did they?
No, it was an office job. It was,
Okay. But the fact that you had to wander in through the plant area.
no, we didn't, Building 40 you didn't.
Well, except you walked in through the gate and through all.
Oh,
of
yeah.
that. Yeah. That wasn't, they didn't tell you that's gonna be a different experience or anything.
No, they just said I was the fifth girl inside the plant.
Mhm.
Of course, after the war started,
Yeah,
it's something else.
there was a lot of them, yeah. Okay, so now you were in 36 and you moved to Building 40.
Yeah, and
Do you
Ray
remember,
Beach was my boss.
do you remember where you were in 36? Were you up in the front end of the building?
Front end.
Okay,
There was individual offices right in front,
right along the wall, that north
Yeah.
wall?
but we were in a bigger office.
Okay,
Didn't stay there very long.
okay.
And then I worked for Ray Beach for a while, and then I don't know how long I worked for him, but then J.J. Edwards got to be my boss
Okay, no, you were up on the second floor of 40,
on the west side,
along the west side, okay.
and it was cold
Oh, yeah. What
because it was factory windows
Okay,
and rafters, just like an old factory building.
so
at
you're
the
looking
time.
up to the bottom of the ceiling and
Yeah, and it
all
was
of the
just,
truss. Huh?
then eventually they filled it in.
Did it have holes in the floor at that time? They go.
No, they had filled that in when we moved over
Okay, they
there.
had filled those holes in. Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
because then it was definitely an office
Yeah.
floor.
What, you remember who else was up there when you went up there, other than you guys and Edwards? What other groups were up there?
Well, plant engineering.
Okay. Was the lab there?
The lab was on the side, east side, toward the
Okay.
front.
All right,
I don't know what was up in front.
all right.
You know, the north.
Was there a cafeteria up there?
Yes,
Okay,
the cafeteria was there, and Mr. Edwards had an awful time trying to keep people from going up there
okay.
during the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Because we'd go up there and get a cup of coffee and a roll. I would. And I said, so he couldn't stop us that way, so he had the cafeteria moved down to, is it 28?
Oh, way down to, yeah, 33. Uh-huh.
33, is that?
Yeah, that's that second floor
Yeah.
cafeteria that you walked up to. Mhm. Oh, so they
But it
took
was
it,
real handy when it was out in front. Yeah, that's,
okay. So that little cafeteria was there. Okay,
so he had, one of the plans
yeah,
for that. And, J.J. Edwards. Oh, I remember there was Herb Holmes
okay,
was under Edwards
all right,
and Henry Summers.
okay,
And they had two new IBM typewriters. Well, first Mr. Edwards got me an old IBM.
okay,
And then they had two nice new ones, and they were going to hire two girls for Herb Holmes. So one day I went to Edwards and I said, why can't I have one of those typewriters? I said, I've been here a long time. Seems like I should have it before a new girl comes in.
uh-huh,
Well, he says, you tell Herb Holmes. Herb Holmes says, well, if he tells me you can have it, you can have it.
you wouldn't tell?
I guess he didn't because I didn't
You
get it.
didn't get it?
And the first thing when I started work after Edwards, I worked for Russell. And the first thing he says, you write a WROR for a new typewriter and I'll sign it. Because he knew. And he's also the only boss from then on that gave me a promotion.
Oh, okay.
Nobody else did.
Do you remember what you hired in at?
Stenographer.
Yeah, but how much you were making back in those days?
I know when I worked for the state, I was making 90.
$90
And that was
a month?
unusual.
That's a
Yeah,
month?
because I wasn't under civil service.
Oh, okay,
Then I think I got around 100,
at the plant,
105 or something like
all
that.
right.
And that was really money after working in Ludington for 10.
Yeah, for $10 a week.
And
Well, now, were you JJ's
secretary steno, so to speak?
Yeah,
Okay. And at that time, did you have to do
I
other?
was I was a steno for J.J. Edwards.
Okay, you were a steno.
And I got to be a steno secretary for Russell.
Okay. Was he the only guy you worked for, like, when you were in Edwards's place, or did you work for other folks?
Well, and I worked for everybody out in the department.
So everybody out there gave you all their typing and
Yeah.
whatever paperwork?
Like I
that they
say,
had?
I had to do the filing,
Mhm.
filing and brief.
Okay.
Yeah, I filed and took dictation
Did you
for
take,
my boss and then did paperwork for the other fellows.
nobody out in the area would come in and dictate a letter to you?
One time, Edwards thought that the fellow should do so remember Ed Powell?
Yeah.
He came in, I said, I can't take time to listen to one person, working for so many.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I let him try it. So he dictated and I'd read it, and he'd dictate and I'd read it. Then I finally typed it, and then he gave it back to me and changed it. And I said, it's been 2 hours. I said, I can't spend 2 hours
On every guy out there.
on every guy. So he realized it, so he never asked me again. And then one time, Don Downey thought he'd use a dictaphone.
Oh, gracious.
And I did dictaphone work in Ludington. But my boss knew what he was going to say, and he'd say it. And then he had a little strip. Well, Downey didn't use that strip to tell me when they had mistakes.
What did he do? Just ramble?
He just rambled, and then when he got through, and he says, back there.
Somewhere.
So it was a mess, when I'd get through with the record.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's enough of that. So I hid it.
Oh, the dictaphone?
That's another, I couldn't spend all that time because he didn't know if the dictaphone is for people that write more collection, like my boss in Ludington had collection letters.
Standard letter.
And they could ramble them off in a hurry.
Yeah.
So one day he asked me where it was, and I said, I don't know, is it around?
It just disappeared, huh? Okay. What kind of a boss was J.J. Edwards?
Oh, he was a good boss, except I didn't get one time he told me, he says, you're getting a raise. And then several days later, it went around, it was a blanket raise.
Oh, for the whole department.
So I went into him and I said, you mean to tell me that because I'm getting a raise and worked hard to get a raise, that everybody else getting one too? In other words, I'd got the raise,
You would've got it anyway. So what did he say to that?
Well, nothing.
No comment, huh? Okay.
And he was a good boss. Lots of times he'd let me take my vacation. See, I'd always go up home. I didn't take any trips to Europe like so many of the other girls did. I went home because my folks were still living, and I figured I should be there as much.
Yeah.
So he let me take a Friday and a Monday.
Oh, all right.
Until, and my next boss was Russell.
Okay.
And I got my promotion through him, but I had to go over and take a test.
Typing or?
Shorthand and typing.
Shorthand typing again.
And Bob Bluscombe was sitting at the table down. He was taking, answering questions.
Okay.
He didn't know me then, or I didn't know him because he ended up in our department.
Right. You must have been doing it as a student or something.
Yeah. Wasn't he GMI?
GMI student, yeah.
And first, there was an old typewriter. Not electric.
Old manual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't take a test on this because, when you type like this, your fingers.
You got a punch, yeah.
Well, not only that, but your fingers get soft.
Yeah.
Well, he says, I'll put that on the, now, when you're going to take a test coming into Oldsmobile, seems to me that they should have had a typewriter for somebody who was used to one or the other.
Right,
Well, then the old typewriter, the keys were all blocked,
yeah, so you
dirty,
could, yeah,
real dirty.
yeah,
So I said, well, if I'm going to take a test with this, I at least want my errors to be clean. So he ran around, I cleaned up the keys,
mm-hmm,
and Lesko, he says, boy, he's getting the biggest kick out of
yeah,
it.
uh-huh,
But it was, to me, it was poor advertising, how to run an office.
yeah, sure. Did most of the women have electrics in those days until they?
Well, not a lot of them,
A lot.
but see, I got this
Yeah,
old one from
you were-
Edwards.
You had an old one from, yeah. But most of the,
See, I hadn't got my new one yet.
yeah. Then you had a mix of manual and electric typewriters available to people.
At the time.
Mhm. Okay.
So,
Okay, now was Russell any different than Edward? Different? How he handled people?
it was, he gave me a lot of, Edwards gave me a lot of dictation.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I was answering telephones too then.
Okay,
And Russell gave me a lot of dictation. Well, Mooney and Truxell.
okay,
Then from there on, they were the younger generation and they weren't too good at it.
okay. So they were not the dictators, so to speak.
But then they'd have the fellas write the letters.
Okay.
Or once in a while, they'd write a letter and have me type it.
Mhm.
And
Now, all this time, you and Edwards were up against the wall of the building,
I always was up against the wall of the
Okay.
building.
the west wall there.
And then, of course, eventually they covered it up.
So you couldn't look out the window.
Well, I had a little window,
Okay.
but they'd put a picture over it so I could lift up and see if it was raining.
Uh-huh.
But it was a lot warmer until they put air conditioning in.
Okay.
And their air conditioning seemed to go like it was going downhill. The west side was so much colder than the east side.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever notice that?
Yeah.
I wore wool in the summer.
The early days when the building was just all open overhead, what did you do in the summer when it was hotter than Hades? Just open.
Well, we had to
windows?
open the windows, and then if you did that, then your papers go flying off your desk. So
Okay.
you couldn't. Then, of course, in the winter, it'd be colder than the dickens
Okay.
from all those windows.
So people just dressed kind of warm or cool in the summer and warm in the winter?
Yeah, we'd wear our coats in the winter. And
Uh-huh.
I remember one girl, Ethel. She went over to the main office
Okay.
and complained about how cold it was. It
Anything
really
happened?
was.
Nothing happened?
But I wore a lot of wool then.
Uh-huh.
They had wool,
Yeah,
not polyester.
yeah, right, right.
And,
But eventually they came along and put in the ceiling.
oh yeah, the ceiling
Do you remember
and the
when-
sides.
Do you remember when that about happened?
Well, it wasn't with J.J. Edwards because of those
Okay.
pictures. R.P. Russell. I had Truxell after, before I had Mooney, didn't I?
Yes.
Must have been around Truxell's time,
Okay.
or in between.
Mm-hmm. Structural and Russell.
Because I remember when Mooney was my boss, we had the new office,
Mm-hmm.
the nice cream
Right,
colored. I
yeah,
don't know when we got it, but we had it. And Jerry down in plant engineering got a new office to match her
Mhm.
you know, so I asked Mooney, I said, why, if plant engineering can have a new office furniture, why can't I?
Mhm.
He says, well, you can have it if it goes along with what I've got.
Okay, kind of
So then I
matches.
got that wheat
Mhm.
color with a nice credenza.
Mhm. Those nice files.
I forgot if I had 2 or 3 files
Yeah,
with one
with a
top.
big top on it.
See, so you have to kind of talk, up sometimes to get
Mhm.
things. Sometimes I think it. Anyway, after I retired, one of the fellows in our department figured I had retired as a 5. But like I said, I only had one promotion. I retired as a 4.
So you started as a 3 and gotten that one promotion to a 4.
And yet I worked for everybody and their brother.
Mhm. When did you retire, Eleanor? What day?
74,
1974.
May 1st.
May 1st. Okay. Who, when you retired, who was the boss?
The guys.
That guy was the boss. So you had seen Edwards and Russell and was it Truxell that came next? And then Mooney,
The Knight,
and Knight,
and Vic Eyes.
and Vickey. Okay, Logan had not
And if
got,
I had have stayed, it would have been Logan.
it would have been Logan, yeah. He had not got there yet.
I hadn't beamed in on him.
Okay.
Well, and what's funny, after I kept waiting for this girl to come over to show her what I was doing. I think she just think I sat there.
Mhm.
And so I told her she'd take letters from the fellows out in the department, all the filing I had.
Yeah.
Why, she says, I didn't know you were that busy.
Hmm. Who was that? Do you remember who the gal was that came over?
No, she was from the other side. And well, like I said, Roberta said she didn't
Yeah.
realize I had so much work. Well,
Yeah.
see, they didn't usually work for the people out in the department like I did.
Mm-hmm. So all that period of time, you had to do letters and work for the big gang in the bullpen. Initially, you had, when you had Edwards, you were doing work for the methods bunch and the packaging methods bunch, did you say?
And then remember, we had to file blueprints.
Mm,
So I had to file blueprints, I had to file the letters that my boss would write.
okay.
Of course, my blueprints, and then these little releases,
Oh, yeah.
they got to, what were those things that they got to be?
Yeah.
The little,
I remember the blue releases that we used to get.
well, yeah,
in the
but I
bushel
mean,
basket.
they took a picture of it.
Oh,
had
the
little cards.
yeah, aperture cards,
Well, I finally graduated from that.
The prints.
Answered the phone and delivered the mail.
Okay. Now, did you answer the phone for the whole gang or just Edwards? You remember?
Oh, everybody else.
Everybody.
In our department,
On that
because
bullpen.
Armitage one time, I would call them by their last name. I didn't say Mr., I just said their last name.
Yeah,
Because after you say Mr. all day,
right. You get 400 calls.
so Armitage asked me if I would say Mr. So-and-so or call them by their first name. I said, well, there's too many Bobs.
Yeah, sure were.
And I said, answering the phone as often as I do, I just kept right on.
Armitage didn't like to be called Armitage, huh? Ooh, how many, when Edwards and you were together, do you remember about how many people would have been out there in the methods and packaging bunch at that time?
Well, one time there were 25.
25 folks? Okay. Now, the layout bunch was a different bunch at that time?
Mm.
Did they work for Edward? Do you remember?
Well, you know, Whiters was down there in the lake,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Well, and I think before him was maybe Henry Summers was down there
Yeah,
at some
I did
point in
work
time.
for them, and I did some work for Downey.
Okay. Now, Downey
Not
was,
Downey, I meant Darton.
oh, okay.
And Art Shabbat
Yeah, he would
was
have,
supervisor of the
he would
packaging.
have had packaging there at some point in time. Yeah. was the most interesting boss you had over those years?
Sure, I don't know. I would say Russell, because he's that taught me a new typewriter and gave me a promotion. He was, he gave me a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah,
so one time I was taking dictation.
right, you were taking dictation.
Yeah, and he asked me to read it back, so I was reading kind of fast. He says, "You don't have to impress me." So,
About Mooney.
yeah, well, he was a boss.
Yeah,
One time he asked me, how come I never got married?
yeah,
And I said, well, somebody's got to stop this population explosion.
hint, hint,
Yeah,
without that law.
well, he asked me that question, so I gave him a good
Yeah,
answer.
right,
He never asked me again.
no, suspect not.
I guess well, I enjoyed my work. After all, I was in that department for 30 years.
Yeah,
And then after I retired, they said they had a different girl each year for 6 years.
mhm,
And then they ended up having a carpool, steno pool of 6 girls. And then when I went back, for one of Jerry's retiree little gathering, it looked so different because they had these little rooms that were 6 feet tall,
the partitions. Yeah,
cupola.
yeah,
And then Don Downey was the boss. So I said, well, you're right back where you started from. Of course, he wasn't boss then.
yeah, right.
Wonder if he ever found the ditto machine.
Probably not. You probably figured out what happened to it.
Well, I think even in the plant engineering department, I think they had it for a while.
Mhm.
And like I say, if they aren't good at dictation, it's just a waste of time.
Yeah, because you can't back up and change things very easy on a tape. How about the machinery that you used, the typewriters and things during those times? Did much change in that in those 30 years that you were there in the department?
Well, one thing they did, they kept me up on I didn't keep the clunker I had of the IBM.
Okay.
I got newer. After I got that nice new furniture, I got a new typewriter.
Did they do more than the old original ones did?
The IBMs?
Yeah, any of those?
No. When I retired, they asked me what I wanted, and I said, I'd like a typewriter.
No. Okay.
So one of the clerks took me down, and I picked one out. And I says, if you don't get enough money, I'll pay the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I might as well get what I wanted.
Sure.
And I picked out one that was gray, silver, there's a touch of black, and a brick color.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that'll match my apartment. And this fellow said, well, I've heard everything. And it was electromatic,
Mm-hmm.
Corona. And it's got the cartridge ribbon.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Well, anyway, I got it and I didn't have to pay anything extra.
Oh. So you did
And
collect
I'm
it.
still using it.
Mhm.
I don't use it as much, but I do use it when I address Christmas cards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How about copy machines in the building? You remember those?
Xerox.
Yeah. What were the first copy machines that we had?
Xerox. See, after all, I've been gone 16 years and they've probably gotten better.
But I mean, way back,
Oh, ditto.
right, Ditto Master. Didn't you have to do a lot of fooling around with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, yeah, I wrote, when you had a long letter and a lot of people to send it to, you would put it on a ditto master.
Mm-hmm.
And this one time, one of the fellows came to me and asked me if I would add a paragraph, do it over and this add this paragraph. Well, when you've got a ditto master, you can scrape that stuff off
Mm-hmm.
and erase it and put a new carbon in, and you would never know the difference.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's what I was trying to tell him I was gonna do.
Yeah.
He said, you better do it over. I said, let me do it my way. I said, I've never given you sloppy work, have I? He said, no. And ditto was sitting over here. And he says, you must remember, they're engineers and you're just a stenographer.
So what?
And I says, okay, let me run my business the way I want to. And I said, engineers, they can't spell, including you.
What did you say to that?
He got up.
He got up and left. Huh?
Well,
Okay.
you find a lot of engineers couldn't spell.
Yeah. No, that was,
If they gave me a letter, they would start a word and it
yeah, empty space.
would put a sort of a line.
Yeah. Okay, so you had dittos that you had to fiddle around with.
He wasn't my boss. He was one of the supervisors.
Oh, no, I don't mean the guy. I mean the masters, the ditto masters that you
Oh,
had
yeah.
to use. Um,
Well, I know when I worked,
where did you run those when you had to make
when I
them?
worked for the state, we had multiliths.
Ah, yeah, did you use those at all?
That's what I was trying to think. I learned to run the multiliths, of course, when I was working, when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm,
And we had a very strict teacher, which paid off.
mm-hmm,
One was easy and the other one was strict.
mm-hmm.
And the strict one, of course, you remembered because she was a
Right.
good teacher.
Yeah. You got something out of that one. Where did you run those masters when you had to make copies on them? You remember was that in the building? You must have had a machine that somewhere in there.
I don't know. I really don't know. I ran them all, I think I ran them myself.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it funny, some things,
Yeah,
has
that's okay.
anybody, have you
Yeah.
found out where it is?
No?
I remember the Xerox machine, it was right in the center.
Yeah.
I had some clothes, but
Yeah.
where the ditto machine was, seems to me it seemed like, maybe up at the south end, they had a ditto machine. Seems like I went up there,
Okay.
to run them off.
And then I remember an old copy machine that existed in Herbie Holmes' department. That was a wet copy
yeah.
machine that was a heck of a mess.
I don't think I ever did that one.
You didn't have to use that.
At least I didn't.
Mhm.
I might have typed for it, but I didn't. Maybe they had somebody to run them.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's how the machinery changed anyway over those years.
And of course, now with these new computer things,
Mhm. Everybody's got their own printer now. How about, go ahead.
I think you can still make mistakes on your computer. It still depends on the
Oh, yeah,
person pushing it.
that's right. Garbage in, garbage out, somebody said.
Aren't they finding a lot of problems with those computers though? I mean, you hear in the papers,
Well,
cutting in on them.
yeah, if you get hitched up to the wrong place, maybe.
Yeah.
Say, how about some of the activities that went on in Building 40 in those days? Did we have any kind of get-togethers or Christmas parties or?
Well, our department didn't have Christmas parties.
Okay.
but plant engineering did.
Mm-hmm.
But we did have a Christmas tree.
Okay.
One of the first Christmas trees,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've got it here. Those artificial trees, they used to be like telephone pole with spokes out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd put it up, but I hadn't gotten around to decorate it. It was about, would that be 3 feet tall?
Yeah, about 3 feet maybe.
And so the fellas, when they'd go out to plant, they'd bring something back, some of these shavings.
Okay.
And then I put a coffee cup up at the top. And so that it was made of stuff that was found out in the plant.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first one. And then I remember Truxell. We got a better tree. He says, here's some money. Get some money from the fellas and we should have a nice tree at Christmas. So I got some money from the other fellas and bought some nice decorations and put them up every year.
Okay. What was your,
And sometimes I'd have a Christmas I had Christmas coffees for 17 years. And then on the Monday, some of the things I had left, I'd bring it. This was in December.
mm-hmm.
I'd bring some stuff and leave it in my office for people to munch on. That was one way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like when I was answering the phone, the first time, the thing I had was just like a speaker.
Well, a microphone.
Yeah, you could take a hold of it.
And you squeeze it.
And when people were walking out for their Christmas holiday, I looked at that and the awfulest urge came over me. And so I thought, well, why not? So I got up, took a hold of it, and wished everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Oh, yeah.
And then next year, one of the fellows was sitting there. He says, I'm not going to go home until you wish me a Merry Christmas.
Uh,
So that's how, so the next year I did it, and then I kept on doing
so
it.
that was kind of how the ritual started.
Of course, at that time, they heard it all over practically all over
Yeah.
because I don't know how far, well, it couldn't have been that far.
Well,
It all depends.
we covered a lot of the area. Methods and layout did, and the
Yeah.
speaker system. Of course, didn't have all the walls, so it probably just covered the whole thing.
Oh, one time when I first came there, they decided to have an office party. Now, when I worked in Ludington, we had office parties. They were one thing, and the office party down here was something else, which I didn't know about.
What was the difference?
Well, we go down to another, I don't know what I mean by that. Everybody'd bring their husbands and wives,
Here?
boyfriends,
Or up
the
there?
ones in Ludington, but they
Okay.
didn't do that here.
Oh, okay. What did we have office parties for? What were the?
Well, just that one, well, that's the only one I ever went to,
Oh, okay. We didn't have,
but they didn't have office parties in our department.
must have had retirement parties or things like that for people that
Sure.
left.
Yeah, but there weren't too many to leave because we had a young department.
Mhm. Like when Truxell left and those kinds of guys, did we have any kind of a get together where we?
No, I don't, well, at least they didn't have it. I remember when Ed Ditto
Okay.
was, he the one that went down Turnstead?
I think maybe he did. Yeah.
Well, they had a party for him, but it was just for the fellas.
Okay, so the ladies didn't get to go.
Well, there weren't too many ladies
Mhm.
in my department. That time I probably was two.
Two. You and somebody
Joy Tinney, probably.
in Machine Tool Records or something.
And, no. What were we talking about?
The office party.
Well, yeah. Well, they told me afterwards that one of the fellas was supposed to be me. And they got all these releases that'd be the last thing I do because, you know, and they had this desk and all these releases piled up. And the fellow wore his wife's maternity dress. It's the only one he could get on, I guess. Wore a mop. And then he sat at the desk with his feet on the,
No.
and filed.
Okay.
That's where they filed in green. But they, I never did get a picture, but I never, I didn't care. I said, they were making fun, but.
Yeah.
But see, Ditto was working for him. I mean, it was his brother took the part of Ed.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay.
And it was a comedy skit.
Yeah. Yeah. How about the Girls Club?
You know what I remember? Now, see these?
Mm-hmm. Earring.
We used to go down, we had so many trips down to Detroit, the Fisher Theater,
Mm-hmm.
and shopping trips downtown Hudson's. And I bought these on one of those trips downtown. And at the time, these were $6, which was an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how old these are.
Was that kind of a regular sort of thing? That
Yeah, we
kinds of
went,
trips were?
I think we went down every spring.
Uh-huh.
And they'd let us out at Hudson's, and I stayed right at Hudson's.
Would that be like a busload of people, or how
Yeah.
would you do it?
I don't know if it was more than one, but I know I always went,
Mm-hmm.
because that was before I had a car.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't seem to do that anymore.
I don't know. Did the Girls Club do other things than
Of course, we had those office. Oh, yeah, we'd have picnics,
okay.
and, well, we had more outings to entertain the employees. But, of course, we paid so much. Maybe we didn't pay for the whole shot or something, but we did pay for the meals and stuff.
Okay, that's if you had an affair, you would have some kind of a cost involved. Okay.
And they stopped having these Christmas parties and June parties when I retired. I think they had one or two.
That's because they were broke.
And then I remember when they used to go down to Detroit, have stage plays.
Oh, for the new car announcement thing? Okay.
And then I remember at the Civic Center when Florence Henderson,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and Patty Page
Mhm.
was up in our building,
Okay.
and Lewis, the
Lewis.
comedian.
Oh, yeah, Jerry Lewis? Yeah. Uh-huh. These were all part of announcement kinds of things that they were doing, getting ready for new cars? Okay.
Then they had them at the Civic Center.
Mhm.
They seem to be kind of going back to that a little bit, aren't they?
I don't know. They did have some kind of a shindig in Detroit this year.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Right now I'm driving a Sierra and I like it. A Brougham Sierra.
Mm-hmm. And you had a beautiful Starfire.
And that was when Ken May, was this Ken May?
Mm-hmm. There was a Ken May, yeah.
He said you should get a white top, then you'd look like you got a convertible. And then he says on top of that, white deflects heat.
Mm-hmm.
And the first car that I had with air conditioning, you get your company cars,
Mm-hmm.
and they said they had one with air conditioning. It was a 68. I said, I don't want air conditioning. I said, I'll open the window. And he says, you better try it. So I took it, and of course, needless to say, I never opened my windows.
Yeah, and you haven't had anything but air conditioning since.
And well, not only that, I like to drive with my radio,
Mm-hmm,
and you get the music. That looks familiar.
mm-hmm, right, should.
I think my last one was gray.
Mm-hmm.
So
How about, remember any interesting little happenings that might have happened in the building during the years, the incidences that would be a unique happening, so to speak?
no, not really.
How'd you take care of the GMI student?
You mean when I did their,
When you did whatever it was they did?
when they gave me typing to do?
Mhm.
Well, Luscombe and another fellow. I can remember those two. Luscombe, when he gave me his typing, well, how often was that? Once a week
Once
or
a
what?
month.
Once a month. He'd always put a candy bar alongside of mine.
Mhm.
The other one didn't.
Okay,
And so one day, the other one came in and asked me to do it. And I said, well, it costs you a candy bar. I think at the time it was 15 cents.
mhm.
He says, you're kidding.
Okay,
And anyway, he didn't give me a candy bar, and he took his typing and left, and I never had to do it for him again.
oh, he did, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
But oh, what Edward? And then they had these monthly things,
yeah,
and they seemed to think I was supposed to type those things too, the regular report.
yeah,
Edward said it was my job. I said, it is not my job. You know, it seemed because I was sitting there with a typewriter.
right.
Anyway, that didn't last very long. I mean, I was too busy.
Mm-hmm.
And we always had a lot of GMI students in our department.
Yeah, we did.
How long were those reports?
Oh, they vary. 8, 10 pages, maybe. You never got involved in typing one of these great big fifth year reports, did you? One of the big thick ones? That was,
Maybe I might have. It seems like I did something. They gave me 75 cents an hour.
that might have been one of those. Yeah. See, did Edwards have a lot of meetings?
They all had meetings. Well, that I don't remember. I always remember the operating.
Okay, the big operating meeting.
Yeah, and once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And my bosses were always the secretaries.
Okay.
So then they dictate, and I have to type it and mail it to all the executives and bill and general,
What would that be, the minutes? Like?
the minutes.
Okay.
Well, when it got to be, Truxell did it.
Mm-hmm.
When he, Truxell was before Mooney.
Right.
I couldn't have been it because Mooney, took dictation from Mooney. One of the supervisors said he didn't think it was necessary.
Oh, to do
Because that was another extra job I had, you know.
Yeah.
And they did away with it.
Oh,
This is the people that are there, if they want to come and see what's going on, they
okay.
should attend the meetings.
Yeah. All right. So we quit making minutes now. Oh, okay.
Something else. Oh, when Ken Knight was my boss, you know, the pantsuits
Mm-hmm.
first came in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the operating meeting had a meeting, their weekly meeting, and they talked about the girls wearing pantsuits,
Mm-hmm.
because we dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
So when he was coming down the hall, I said, well, what's the verdict? And he said, you can wear pantsuits, but if they come with slacks or tuck-in blouse, you let me know. And I said, if you can't tell the difference, I'm not gonna tell you.
That was Kendall, huh? Mm-hmm.
So I had bought a pantsuit and some shoes to match.
Mm-hmm.
So when they said we could wear them, so the next day, there weren't too many that wore them.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I did.
And prior to that time, everybody had to wear skirts,
Oh yeah,
dresses.
I wore suits
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that would be the most monotonous outfit.
Yeah.
I didn't wear suits like they did. I wore suits to keep my jacket on,
Mm-hmm.
not a blouse with
Yeah.
it.
You're right.
And wool dresses. Well, anyway, so I came with my pantsuit, took my coat off and stood in the doorway, and I said, well, boys, what do you think? And well, some of those girls didn't wear them for a long time,
Oh, really?
but I thought, why not?
Sure.
And I remember when the styles got so short
And skirts that got very short.
above the knee.
Uh-huh.
Well, I had an awful time because I didn't want to wear mine there.
Yeah.
So, I used the dresses I had that got so short, I used them as the tops for my pantsuits
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and got slacks to match them.
Mm-hmm.
No, but they were nice.
So most of the girls dressed up fairly
Yeah.
good for going to work. Never had anybody wearing in blue jeans and that sort of stuff.
Oh no. Do they do that now?
I think so.
I've never even worn a pair of blue jeans. I remember when saddle shoes
Oh, yeah.
and anklets were in, of course, I was working at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to belong to a bridge club, and when we had a picture taken, I didn't think of it at the time, but I'm sitting in a wicker chair, all dressed up with silk stockings and suede shoes. And the other girls are some of them are sitting on the floor, and they all have anklets
Mm-hmm.
and saddle
Yeah,
shoes.
saddle shoes.
And I thought, well, I never owned a pair,
Mhm.
not even loafers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were the styles right there.
Except I didn't wear them. My hiking outfit was boots up to my knee,
Mm-hmm.
and so these pants I used to wear when they rode horseback,
Oh, yeah. Is that knickers? I don't know what you call them. Anyway,
jodhpurs,
baggies.
jodhpurs. No,
Well, okay. What about, let's see. There was Edwards and Russell, and then Mooney, and then Kendall followed. Is that right?
Kendall was after Truxell.
Oh, it was Truxell Mooney. Then Kendall.
One thing about Truxell, I always remember, he told me that he was being promoted, and he says at one time they used to take their girls with them.
Oh, okay. Like if you left the factory and went to some other job somewhere, yeah.
And they told him they didn't do that anymore. And I said, well, it's nice to know you thought I was good enough to go with you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a lot of little things like that to remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if I did just retire as a 4.
Yeah, well, good for you. Saw a lot of people.
Yeah, I know it.
Everybody that worked with you got promoted, didn't they?
Yeah,
You must have did a good job with them all.
must have. Except it's too bad I didn't stay with Logan.
Well, you could have.
You know, I didn't even think of retiring. It just, I just figured I was gonna work forever, I guess.
Yeah.
And, one of the fellows came in to, you know, when they used to have their stock and bonds.
Yeah.
They'd come in and pick them up
January, sort of.
after he just retired.
Mhm.
He says, you better look at the fine print. He says, you'd be making just as much staying home as you do coming to work. So I looked at the fine print, decided maybe it was time. As it is though, I worked a lot longer than they do today. I mean, as far as
Yeah.
the regulars.
Mhm.
But like I say, I like my work.
Well, good. What have we not covered? Anything else you can think of that's happened that was kind of unique and different during that time?
No. I remember Henry Summers used to he had
Eleanor A. Spalding of 750 Edgemont, Apartment 10, Lansing, Michigan 48917. The recording was made on June 12, 1990 by Jim Walkinshaw at the Oldsmobile History Center. This is tape number 2 of 2 tapes.
What about Henry Summers?
he used to did he take trips anyway? He'd have people over to his house in the evening, his group, his department,
Okay, this is when
and
he was
show
in
these
packaging?
travel
Okay,
pictures.
oh, like a travel log, sort of.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And several times, of course, that was before I had a car, and he'd take me home and I'd have dinner with him and I'd stay overnight with he and his wife.
Oh,
And so that was always nice to see the travel series.
yeah,
And and he was the one that was so hard for him, you know, his glasses. I think
yeah,
he
I
had the
very
first
bad eyesight.
contact lens, but the contact lens that he had is a far cry from what they have today.
Yeah, I remember he had very thick glasses.
But these contacts covered his whole eye,
Oh, yeah,
and now they're just a
Yeah.
little. I don't know if he could have seen with that kind or not.
yeah, I didn't know him very well.
But when he has those contacts, he could read like this.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, he'd have it.
Within 6 inches of his nose, so,
So he really needed something.
yeah. What, where did the ladies stay during the time that, like in the 40s? Did you stay together in rental homes or what happened?
Oh,
You mentioned when you first came, you stayed at somebody's house.
yeah, a room.
Yeah, as a room. Uh-huh.
Well, a couple times. I stayed about a year at cousins in a room, and then at a friend for another year. Then I got my first 2-room apartment.
Okay.
And from then on, I was in apartments.
How did you get back and forth from work to?
Well, we had rides. And and then you could, because they practically told them they had to give people rides.
Like carpooling, sort of.
And then, after the war, why, a certain length of time, then all of a sudden it dawned on me, people didn't really want to pick riders up anymore.
Okay.
And I decided I'd take driver's training. So I took driver's training from the Grand Ledge High School
Okay,
in the summer.
yeah.
Then in other words, the first car I had, I was 47. And nowadays they have to have them when they're 16.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, I had to wait till I could pay for it.
Yeah. People didn't ride buses or that?
Oh, I rode buses all
Did
the
you?
They had bus coming from Lansing to Grand Ledge
Mhm.
so many times
Mhm.
a day. And then they had buses, like I take the bus up to Ludington,
Mhm.
and some of them would go through Grand Ledge.
Oh, okay.
The express would go around.
Oh, yeah.
Now they don't even have buses going into Ludington.
Yeah. True.
Isn't that too bad?
So many towns aren't even connected anymore.
It goes through Cadillac.
Yeah.
Maybe.
See, how about Charlie?
Oh,
Charlie Gunther. Remember Charlie?
sure. How come he doesn't come to
I don't know.
he came to the building
Came to
41
one. Yeah.
in his own.
Mhm. Right.
You know, when they had that building 41, a lot of people came.
Mhm.
And when you go to these others, it seems like a lot of the people that come are from building 40.
Mhm. Yeah, there are. Yeah.
That's why I think it's too bad that, like Leisman and Kerr,
Yeah.
they didn't graduate from Oldsmobile,
Yeah.
but they worked most of the time at
Most of their
Oldsmobile.
life here, yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's right. They miss it. Why the building 40 thing was a nice thing.
Oh, now, getting back to this, short skirts, Mr. Russell asked me, how come when I was going to wear these short skirts, I said, well, from what I see, your imagination is better. He says, I agree with you. And then, of course, I couldn't find a coat long enough, so I wore this one leopard velveteen coat.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Remember?
Yeah.
It went on and on. Finally, Leisman asked me one day, when are you gonna get a new coat? Well, I said, I can't find any long enough. And there
Yeah,
wasn't enough material to
Yeah.
lengthen it.
yeah.
So when I finally found a coat, it was bright red with a beautiful fur collar.
Oh, yeah.
And I started out wearing it in December. And someone called me from the other part of the building and says, I hear you got a new coat.
Word travels fast.
Well, you know what's funny? When Leisman retired out, I got a slip to go down there.
Mhm.
And I still had this coat in my closet.
Oh, my God.
It was in good condition.
Yeah.
And so I had Jerry Bruce take a picture with me in it.
Okay.
And I sent it. I said, if Exhibit A hadn't come, here's Exhibit B.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, it's just to prove that I can still wear the coat.
Uh-huh.
Of course, it didn't look as nice.
Yeah. And a couple of years older.
Well, not only that, but I filled it up more. I finally took it to a phase
Mhm.
2, and I got about $30
Yeah.
for it.
Mhm. So somebody put it to good use.
And I could still wear it today. I wore it once in a while. Somebody says, oh, that's a good looking coat. And how many years? see, 62. I had it when I went down, took that trip in my car.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 65.
Mm.
It was fairly new then. Well,
Okay. Anything else you can think of that we should talk about?
no. Not really, except, I would, have all my breakfast at Sal's Coffee Shop, and they were Greek. And I always remember they'd have this rice pudding, and their desserts and things were on the sweeter side.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very good. Even their spaghetti was sweeter
Oh,
for some reason.
okay. Mm-hmm. What, did you eat lunch at Sal's?
Oh, another thing, we called it the Building 40 Hamburg.
Mm-hmm.
And way back then, it had bacon in it
Oh,
and tomato,
okay.
sometimes cheese.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Steve and his wife, probably about 3 years ago, and that's what he brought up. Because now all your Hamburg places
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
But he had it way before they even thought of it.
Mhm.
And his was a Building 40 Hamburg.
Yeah.
Because a lot of his clientele came from Building
Oh,
40.
yeah, they sure did. Did you eat over there regularly?
Every morning,
Mhm.
I did. Once in a while, I'd go there at noon if I knew certain days they had special things. Otherwise, I'd run down to the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
And this one winter, I was running down there, and I lost an earring in the snow by where we go in. Those louver things that go down.
Yeah.
We duck under.
Right.
And anyway, in the spring, this one fellow behind the counter said, "Did you lose an earring?" And I said, "Yes." And he had it.
Oh, my
I said,
God.
"How'd you know it was me?" He says, "You always wore earrings."
Oh, that was nice.
And I was going to bring one. One of the funny things they gave me for my retirement party, the fellas had made an earring out of different things from out in the plant. And it was about a loop like that.
Yeah.
And now they wear that kind.
All the time. It's even the boys were.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my brother really enjoyed it, and he got a kick out of that poem
That Larry wrote?
that Larry wrote.
Uh-huh.
And
Did he read that night?
yeah, he read
Yeah.
it in full. And
Yeah.
because I would tell Jack about different things.
Yeah. Where did you get the nickname Tillie?
Well, when we were over in 36,
Yeah.
I was busy then too.
Mm-hmm.
And and I was moaning and groaning about how busy I was. And one fella said, "Remember Beetle
Yeah.
and Bob Humphrey?
Yeah.
They were there, and they're the ones that gave me the name."
Oh.
Well, they said, "Oh, poor Tillie the toiler."
Oh, okay, that's where it came from. All right.
And I had this umbrella, and I left it, so they put a little label on it and put Tillie on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I got started. Some people didn't even know me as Eleanor.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if they asked me, I was Eleanor, but if they asked somebody else, I was Tillie.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. That stuck with you all those years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was in mall one day visiting with a friend, resting,
Mm-hmm.
and a big guy goes by, and he came back. He said, "Are you Tillie?" I said, "Yes,"
How did he know?
because
He had worked in the building?
he had come from the factory to go through,
Yeah.
to plant engineering.
Yeah. I remembered the,
Tillie.
interesting. Well, that sure stuck with you.
I never had a nickname before that.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't bad, and I thought that was quite clever of those fellas. They went to the library
Uh-huh.
and got those things from the comic,
Mm-hmm.
enlarged them.
Yeah. Yeah. Cut them all out. Yeah.
And they had a great big thing for me to sign. Stood about so high,
Yeah.
about so wide, and it had her in the center.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody signed it, but the frame fell apart.
I'll did it. Oh, that's bad.
It could be fixed, but I haven't any place to put it.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a family room,
Yeah.
it would have worked.
Yeah. Well, okay. Is that enough? Shall we stop?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Good job.